Hello once more. Welcome to Some Idiot Reads, where I'm some idiot, and it's time to read some stuff. I almost used an expletive there, which I understand I probably shouldn't do. I don't know why I really even care, but hey, we're here. Gonna go ahead. I didn't get a dispatch. I didn't get a reading done last week, which was gonna be unsung. But I'm going to stick to my normal schedule of things, and I'm going to go ahead and do a dispatch this week. What dispatch, you say? I hear no one say? God. It's one of Coyote Wallace's dispatches from Appalachia, a fantastic series over on Medium that I highly encourage you, the listener, whether you are here deliberately because you enjoy the channel and hearing my dulcet tones. I love you very much. Thank you. Or you just happen to stumble here because of the algorithm. I still love you so very much. Please subscribe. And then once you're done subscribing, swing on over to Coyote's Dispatches over on Medium. I will have a link in the description. Dude does some phenomenal writing. You absolutely need to check out his work. We're going to jump right on into it, though. This one was released on the 16th, last week. And it is entitled Heroes for the Hopeless. We start out with... I don't know the word for that, Coyote. It feels like it's ready to leap out of the screen at me. I think that was the intent. Coyote powers activate. All right. One might not believe it, but it's surprisingly easy to escape all the bad news that pours in seemingly every day when you live out in the middle of nowhere. The poplar trees and the white oaks don't seem to care much for politics, and I've been fortunate so far in my life as to never yet see a squirrel sporting a MAGA hat. The air is clean, sweetened by the blooming of flowers that still grow wild in what was once my mother's garden. I reckon if the whole world were to burn, one might sit in a spot out beneath the shade trees of my backyard and not see smoke for the glow of the fireflies at dusk. I've lived here more or less my whole life, with a few exceptions, and this land has been in my family now for 3 generations. Soon to be 4, when I pass it on to my own sprat and her girlfriend one day. What follows is a picture that I'm assuming is from the road. Well, it's from a road, presumably the road over where Coyote lives at. Middle of nowhere, folks. But the reality is, one can't hide away from the world, nor can one turn a blind eye to those who suffer. We live in dark times. The soul of our nation is imperiled by fascism. Cruelty has become more commonplace than decency, and racism has once more reared its ugly head to seize the reins of both law and order. Food is expensive, justice rare, and each of us faces our own private adversities. Few of us may admit it, but hope now often feels less like a life preserver to be held on to, and more like a star outside our window on which we can only wish. What follows is a picture, all too common these days, of ice being absolutely fucking evil. I have no great answers, nor do I possess solutions that will remedy the ugly wound inflicted upon our country by the greedy, xenophobic, and those of low empathy and lower still character. No history that I might uncover, buried in these mountains like the coal that has defined my people, proves sufficient to the task of ending this calamity. Nor can anything I create change the tides of a mighty nation that has fallen so low. Fortunately, Superman has saved the day and gave me a little bit of an idea. So I shall tell the story of how I learned what to fight for, even out here in the middle of nowhere, and the importance of heroes to those without hope, in the darkest and most forgotten parts of our country. I will tell you not of the men and women of Appalachia's past, but of the figures that once jumped off of old, dog-eared pages to pull a boy from nothing to the darkest paths of his young life. Let me see how to read this one a little bit better, because this always throws me off a bit. I am Cy. I'm some idiot. I'm reading. No, I'm just going to keep rolling with it. Screw it. I'm reading Coyote Wallace. This is his dispatches from Appalachia. And today, we're going to talk about heroes for the hopeless, and how sometimes the fictional can save you, just as surely as that which is real ever could. Origin story. What follows is a picture of Pikeville, Kentucky, in all of its quote-unquote majesty. I was born in Pikeville, Kentucky, home of the Hatfields and McCoys, right in the middle of coal country. When I was very young, my mother and father parted ways. While I had enjoyed some comfort when they were together, their separation thrust my mother and me into poverty. We were forced to move in with my maternal grandmother, in a rural offshoot about 20 miles away called Harold. That was a rough neighborhood, to say the least. My grandmother owned a bar that stood where my home does today. My mother, though trained as a nurse and experienced as a horse trainer, took up bartending to help ends meet. I was a shy and quiet child who mostly kept to himself. And since my mother couldn't afford a babysitter, I spent those nights in the storeroom of the bar. I passed the time watching old black and white horror films and orchestrating elaborate battles between G.I. Joes among towers of bottles and giant cans. Sometimes I would just lie on the beer cases and listen to the band play and the people laugh and holler until my mother would come and get me at the end of the night. What's pictured? A lot of booze. Yes, you can totally sleep on cases of Bud Light. One evening, bored and restless, I ventured out into the bar and became the center of attention. The drunks and the honky-tonk ladies were always kind to me, and on that night, I remember one man lifting me up to touch the ceiling. Neither my mother nor my grandmother approved of my mingling with the inebriated. I didn't exactly get in trouble, but I was reminded I wasn't supposed to leave the back room. My mother, barely 5 feet tall... It's been a long day, but I'm getting through it because I really want to read this. My grandmother, barely 5 feet tall and the family's designated problem solver, came to me a day or two later as I was settling in to watch Monster Vision. She had an old yellow suitcase in her hands. I still remember how battered it looked, the color of a jawbreaker with all the flavor licked away. She looked like the weight of it might tip her over as she huffed through the back door. "Bub, I got you something." "What is it, Mama?" I didn't expect her to tell me, but my mind was already racing with possibilities. My granny was always bringing me little gifts and trinkets from yard sales and what have you, and at 8 years old, I looked at that suitcase and imagined it full of toys. I was on a bit of a G.I. Joe kick at the time, as most young boys were, and I pictured legions of plastic soldiers I could organize into grand battles. My mother was busy opening the bar, and the moment my grandmother laid the suitcase on the floor was just between us. I crossed the room in a flash, and with clumsy fingers, I pried the case open. Inside, piled high and in complete disarray, was a collection of old superhero comics from the 60s and 70s. Many were faded, a few had lost their covers, and I didn't immediately understand how important that suitcase would become to me. It follows as a picture, a number of old comics. A whole suitcase full of this. Books? I said, my voice tinged with disappointment. They definitely weren't G.I. Joes, or even knockoff GoBots. I was still a little kid. I couldn't even read that well, much less for fun. Video games, toys, things I could get my hands on were my cup of tea. Worse, while I recognized a few of the heroes on the pages, Superman and Batman mostly, I didn't see a trace of any X-Men that looked like the ones I saw on Saturday morning cartoons. And they were all so old. I could feel all that excitement over getting a big suitcase full of toys turning into a little kid petulant disappointment in my guts. Now you take care of them, you hear me? These were Eddie Lynn's when he was alive. I thumbed through an old comic that had lost its cover. Heroes I didn't recognize at all. Wildcat, Starman, the Atom, and Black Canary stared up at me from their worn and faded pages. Eddie Lynn had been my mother's younger brother, and he was not spoken of by my mother at all. He died before I was even born, buried alive while racing his car through Wheelwright, Kentucky when he was just a teenager. No one ever mentioned him. No one. He was an unspoken ghost of our family. The very act was still enough to bring my mother to tears on the wrong day. My grandmother, however, was made of sterner stuff altogether, and I suppose she'd been holding on to those comics since his death. I do not know if my previous excursion into the bar had motivated her to dig them up, or if she had simply seen in me some quality of need that could be best addressed by caped crusaders and men of steel, but entrust me with them she did. For the first few hours I resisted. Monster Vision and the endless campaign of G.I. Joe against the forces of Cobra was still more appealing. The suitcase and its contents had very little pull on me at first. It was only as night wore on that my curiosity began to creep in. Somewhere in the background, George Jones was singing about not needing a rocking chair, while glasses clinked together and drunkards sang along. But all that might well have been a million miles away. As luck would have it, I stumbled upon an old copy of Weird War Tales about a robot soldier fighting in the Vietnam War, almost right out the gate. Though I couldn't fully follow the whole story, it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. There was a grimness to it, a grittiness that made it feel decidedly adult, and I found myself devouring that old comic's contents with a gusto I hadn't known I possessed. Follows a picture of the comic in question. Captioned, I flippin' loved this. I was hooked. I went through that whole suitcase of old comics in no time flat. Much to the chagrin of my already financially beleaguered mother, I soon had myself a new hobby. There was no collector in me then, and there still isn't now. I was a consumer of the stories, and it didn't matter where they came from. Old tales, new tales, omnibuses, flea market cast-offs. Whenever my mother took me to the grocery store or whatever, I'd find their comic rack, park myself right on the floor in front of it, and read as many as I could before she came and fetched me. As an aside, my end. Similar sort of thing. I never got deep into comics, but whenever my mom would wind up going up to the Walmart in my hometown, I would just go over to the book aisle and just sit down and read fiction. So, feeling it. Even my father, who wasn't around much after the divorce, and with whom I had always struggled to be close, got in on the act. That's how I came to visit my first comic book store, and the only one in our small town, a little place called Page 3. Unlike my mother, my father had money from working in the coal business. I remember how he stopped me on the sidewalk out in front of that store, with its big cutouts of Spawn in the windows and flashing neon sign that read Marvel in red and DC in blue. I didn't get much time with him after the divorce, and I was happy to have an interest that he seemed to approve of. What follows is a picture of page 3. You can get one of anything you want, Sprout, but you have to take care of it. He thought I would take to comics, like a boy might take to baseball cards, and through that, learn to invest and collect things of value. All fine lessons. Unfortunately for him, I was hooked on the stories and cared absolutely nothing for anything but the stories. I loved the tales themselves, the characters, the escape into a world where, even when it was strange, things still made sense. The idea of loving the thing as much as I did the content was a foreign concept to me in those years. Sure thing, old man, I promise I will. Boy howdy, I was excited. Do you remember your first comic book shop and what it looked like through the lenses of your childhood? Actually, yes, I do. Because while I didn't really get much into comics, I did play around a bit with Magic the Gathering. And I did have a couple of comics. I had a Deadpool #2. Once upon a time, I gave that to a friend. But, answer that question, yes. Superheroes leapt off of every wall. Most sealed in slick plastic coverings as if they had some hidden dangerous potential. Collectibles were still rare back then, but they had the entire Uncanny X-Men toy line that was based on the animated series, which was just starting to blow up. I was a poor kid from a bad neighborhood, and there I stood in the very center of a nexus of imagination. A place where even the adults were allowed to love Superman or Wonder Woman. If I could have lived there, you may bet your ass I would have done so without the slightest hesitation. For those curious, I made him buy me the first ever appearance of Steel Spider-Man with its shiny metallic green cover. I think my dad had a copy of that. Our Dalmatian, Lady, chewed the damn thing to shreds less than 2 weeks later. Oh. But there was more to what those books gave me than just the fact I hauled them with me on every family trip or excursion. Not only had I picked up a passion for reading, I was exposed to ideas that I didn't see every day. I didn't learn not to be a bigot from school teachers in rural Kentucky. I learned it from the headmaster of the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. I didn't learn to put my fist up and stand up to bullies from my father, who was rarely in my life, or my overprotective mother. I learned to stand up to them from Bruce Wayne. When I was going through hard times, I cracked jokes and learned to laugh, just like Peter Parker, and found that it really did help. Follows a picture from Maximum Carnage, and this has stuck with me ever since. If Reed Richards could hold the line against Galactus, what might I be able to do? If Hal Jordan could go from cocky pilot to fearless Green Lantern, what might I overcome? When Green Arrow talked about sticking up for the poor and the downtrodden, or when Spider-Man stood against unbeatable odds, that gave me hope that if I dug in and held my ground, I could one day overcome my circumstances. Still, as important as these heroes and stories were to my development, as important as the works of Len Wein, David Cockrum, my God, his art, Denny O'Neil, Chris Claremont, and John Byrne were in shaping the man who I would become, harder times were still to come. These would require me to find additional heroes, for a darkness loomed in my future. The world gets a little darker, and hope burns a little brighter. What follows? A picture. A little old to hit the mark, but it's the closest one I have to the time period. It's a picture of Coyote. I do not know what's up in my brain. I'm short-circuiting various words. My sincerest apologies. Picture of Coyote with his grandmother beside him. Two important things happened to me the year I turned 13 that would change my life forever. The first was discovering I was epileptic. I have what they call grand mal seizures, a potentially fatal form of epilepsy I will live with all my days. Each seizure leaves a scar on the brain and brings the risk of brain damage or death. I was terrified going through all those tests after my first seizure, being pushed back into the machines and watching the fear gather in my mother's eyes. They thought I might have had a brain tumor. Though she wasn't happy to learn about my condition, she was grateful it wasn't worse. Picture of the brain during a grand mal seizure. This led to a certain degree of alienation from my peers. While I had a few friends in the neighborhood, most kids I grew up with were neither kind nor understanding of difference. I now had to tell people when I spent the night somewhere that I was this thing in case something bad happened and I had a seizure. When I made friends, they eventually had to know, otherwise they wouldn't know what to do if I got sick around them. I started to develop a fierce anxiety disorder. I was different, I was poor, and it felt like the whole world didn't give a rat's ass about the poor or the different. Not in Kentucky. Maybe in Starlight City, or Marvel's fictional New York they did, but in the real world's forgotten corner of coal country, it was a different story. Being sick meant I spent a lot of time at home and out of school. It was during those long days, left to my own devices while my mother worked, that I stumbled upon an offshoot of the tabletop role-playing community. Back then, private servers and voice chat games were rare. Everyone just typed up what their characters were doing in real time. Imagine a never-ending book writing itself right before you, and you were invited to join in on the fun. Oh man. Okay, wait. Got a time check on this one just for a sec. I'm positive this is not something like a screenshot of you, but like, I am amused, like, seeing Dark Mist. That was where I used to go hang out on. What was it? I know Dark Mist I was on with, what was it? It was Dark Mist. Oh, and Espernet. Those are the two ones where I wound up dropping my hat. A couple of different servers. That's neat, man. I haven't thought of Dark Mist in forever. God help those of us old enough to remember IRC. Oh, how I loved it. I might not have understood half the names or the quote-unquote rules, but Lord Almighty did it fascinate me. This was years before branching dialogue options became standard in video games, and I was dazzled by the idea of this living game that never seemed to end. Those old roleplay rooms churned 24 hours a day, and that was a mighty fine escape from being sick and poor. Games like Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Wraith the Oblivion, and Mage the Ascension, even at a glance, and though much too young for their content, stirred in me the desire to be part of the stories, not just an observer, and taught me the joy of crafting tales for others. They called it the World of Darkness, originally created by Mark Rain Hagen and White Wolf Publishing. But when you came from nothing, that darkness seems outright magical. Honestly, myself, same. I got drawn into World of Darkness, specifically Werewolf, by a friend back in high school. And it was just a sight to somewhere else entirely. It made things feel... I don't even know what the word would be on this one, and I'm not going to take up much time, like, trying to contemplate it, but yeah. I guess hope might actually be a close one. The problem was that beyond stealing what content I could find online, the books with all the lore and rules were not what my mother would call priced for working folks. That $39.99 book might not seem like much today, But when your mom works 2 jobs and you got medical bills piling up, that's a much stiffer bill than the $10 a month I usually spent on comic books. My mother didn't even own a credit card for me to order from the company, and a confluence of bad publicity and cruel stupidity, the Lilith murders, or just the vampire killings as they're known down here, made trying to find these books in local stores impossible. As a side note, it's something worth looking that up. Coyote and I had talked about that. He told me about it a couple years back, and yeah, that was a thing. Being poor and living in a small town doesn't just close doors and block means of escape. It can deny you the very windows you might look through and see how different the world could be. And this leads me to the second life-changing thing that happened that year. I took what would prove to be my final trip with my father, the last real vacation I ever had. He loaded me, my cousin Jillian, and his mother into the car and booked us a week in Florida so I could say I'd been to Disneyland at least once. The fact that I was terminally shy, riddled with anxiety, scared of having seizures I didn't fully understand, and not a fan of the heat didn't matter. The important part of the trip did not happen at Disneyland, the Gator Parks, or the white sandy beaches. It happened 2 days in, when my father and I discovered a used book warehouse selling old titles at discount. The store was huge, more like a supermarket than a bookstore, and though the shelves were full, they were mostly unlabeled. You could wander seamlessly from a stack of romance novels into books on human psychology without rhyme or reason. And there was a bin in the back. There, sitting atop a pile of unsorted books, was a copy of Werewolf the Apocalypse, Mark Rein-Hagen, Bill Bridges, and Robert Hatch, and Wraith the Oblivion by Mark Rein-Hagen, Sam Chupp, and Jennifer Hartshorn. The cover glowed in the dark. Oh my god, it so did. The same friend that got me into Werewolf, he had a copy of Wraith, and that was just the coolest friggin' thing when I went over to his house to hang out. Like, oh my god. I went off to the races. I don't think I left that hotel room more than twice after that. Vacations end, sandy beaches fade in memory, but what I held in my hands hummed with possibility. These were not just books in the conventional sense. They were tools to help me escape the prison of my reality, if only briefly. They contained lessons that, over time, sharpened my pen to the point that I might use it to change my life. Later, through tremendous effort, I convinced my mother to apply for a credit card just so I could order Mage the Ascension, Satiros Brucato, Stuart Week, Bill Bridges, Andrew Greenberg, and Travis Williams. And that was the only purchase she ever made on that old Visa card that I ever knew of. Follows as a picture. Cover art, Mage the Ascension revised, I believe? These books were nothing like the superhero comics I grew up on. In their pages, I found a world grimmer and harder than my own, by design. And yet amidst that darkness, I was encouraged to carve out stories of intrigue, defiance, battling impossible odds, and even changing one's own world. From pages meant to teach how to run a game, I learned how to craft stories for myself, since I rarely had anyone to play with beyond the occasional chat room. From lore designed for horror, I learned to pan for absurdity and wonder like gold in a muddy stream. Just like the X-Men taught me, it was okay to be seen as a monster by some. I learned to harness my anger and make it work for me. If you have the will and conviction, you can plant your feet, face your problems, and fight. I was saturated with tales of those who did as they pleased, just like the coal operators, and those who fought them. I was washed clean of the coal dust that is the fate of every young Appalachian man around here by the love for words and storytelling I found between those covers. When you live poor and down in the grime, you take hope wherever you can find it. As I learned to find salvation from hardships, living on food stamps, barely having holidays or birthdays, and the other small indignities of poverty, there were times I could have been led astray. Racism and closed-mindedness are as much a scourge of these mountains as black lung and bad water, and many young people fall into those traps. But by being exposed to characters from all cultures, genders, and sexual orientations, and learning how to weave them into stories, I was protected from those corrosive elements. I learned to walk in others' shoes. Just as comics taught me how to fight for the downtrodden and to accept difference, these books showed me how to see through different eyes in a way no real person in my life ever could. It may seem small or strange to some, but those lessons saved me from the pitfalls of life in coal country. Without them, I would have struggled more to find myself, to know the kind of person I wanted to be, and to hold on to the belief that sheer will and grit can change your circumstances. I do not imagine that I am alone in that feeling. Avengers Assemble. As I mentioned in the very beginning, America looks mighty bleak right now. Cruel men in masks, ICE, throw little children in chains, and break up families. We must contend with politicians who prey on the poor, disabled, and defenseless in service to a tyrant. Every day we hear news of new depravity committed by those meant to embody the honor and empathy of our once proud nation. For most of us, the best we can do is hug our families tight, complain loudly, and hope sanity will one day return to our land. However, most is not all. I believe it was Uncle Ben who said, "With great power comes great responsibility." If you are reading this, and you have the power to create, now is the time the world needs you. The darkness out there is so thick you can scarcely breathe without feeling it crawl down your throat. And at times like these, the world needs the light of your creations and what they can bring. If I could be saved when I was young, and the world was not quite so mad as it is now, how many more like me exist in the hopeless, forgotten corners of this country? How many will this weekend look upon Superman or Mr. Terrific for the first time and feel their hearts sing? How many will pick up a tattered comic and dive in, searching for heroes to save them, if only for a few hours, from the weight of their lives? Who might we teach to love and work together through the adventures of Charles Xavier's band of misfit students? Who might we inspire to stand up when they see injustice by showing them what Captain America does to Nazis? Who, down on their luck or feeling trapped, might find escape in magic, mysteries, monsters, and intrigues of every kind? Who can say how many will look at that big S on Superman's chest and understand that love and decency are the true measure of strength, not the force behind a punch? If you are a singer, we need your songs. If you're a painter, we need your visions. If you're a writer, we need your stories. And if you're a dreamer, our nation needs your dreams in these dark hours more than it needs the fury and fire of those cruel hearts who have dragged us low deserve. We need Gail Simone giving voice to the voiceless with the X-Men, Kelly Sue DeConnick lending strength to Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and so many more while tackling industry issues, or Tom Taylor breathing life into worlds both frightening and familiar. We need every pen and every brush. We need Satiros Brucato, crafting wonder out of thin air. We need all those, with a little fire, to lend just a bit of their spark to these grim days. We need designers, visionaries, and explorers of the human heart of all shapes and sizes. We need to all step up now, more than ever. Because somewhere out there is a kid separated from their family who needs Captain America. Somewhere is a man barely holding on after watching his house wash away, who still needs to believe that life's adversity can be overcome. These are not just stories, characters, or myths. They are not merely fandoms or corporate-owned properties. What creators wield are seeds of future hope, building blocks of empathy and integrity for the impressionable, and visions of a world where, no matter how strange things seem, justice still works for the little guy. What you create can be a life preserver for someone drowning in the apathy and callousness sweeping our country like a plague. No matter who you are, you can help by believing in people, encouraging them, and celebrating the stories you love. Do not be dissuaded if you are not a creative titan. Even the smallest doodle might pull someone back from the edge on a dark day. Let us consider not theatrical revenue or sales figures, but the simple truth that what we make might be like stars in the night sky, by which the lost can navigate their way to a better home. This world needs heroes, so let's give them heroes. Solidarity forever. Holy shit, dude. Alright, first and foremost, go to this article. Seriously. My apologies for being a bit stuttery and just getting some words mixed and short-circuited there towards the very beginning. But I want to say this was phenomenal. This was amazing. This needs more people to go give it some love. Oh wait, no. Sorry, I didn't mean to click on that. I meant to click on first and foremost. Go to this article. Right there, where I hit it. Give a clap. Right there. Give a clap to this thing. Get it some attention. I want views on this, please. I'm actually, seriously asking, please. Go here. Give it a clap. Give it some love. If you have the money for it, seriously, give him a tip. Right here, this little hand icon. Go to that. Doesn't matter if it's $1, $5. I mean, 50 if you're feeling froggy and you got the liquid. But if you can, toss a tip for it. Show the guy some, love for that. Because this is a genuine, beautiful piece. And hey, Satiros Brucato. I actually, Brucato, I absolutely love their work. I did not get into Mage until much later on in my life. But I absolutely adore Mage. Man. I honestly don't have any additional words for this one. This is beautiful. Truly is. Sorry. Wow. Okay. Make sure. Go to Coyote's Medium page. I've got a link in the description. This right here, it's also on the main portion of the Medium page. It'll be a green button. Give them a follow. Let's increase these numbers. I see that's up from the last time I did dispatch reading. I'm glad to see it going up. I want to see it going up more. I especially want to see some claps done on this article specifically. Share it. Spread it. Get that out there. Encourage people to go check it out. This is a really, really, really good one. This is out there with Declaration of Our Defiance in my mind. I love this. As a creative, I absolutely fucking love this article. But spread it, show some love, do all those good things there. Also, bear in mind, I do continue to have links for Coyote's book, American Mystic, The Life, Death, and Rebirth of Jimmy Wonderful, in the descriptions. I don't get anything for that other than a nice warm feeling of supporting my homie with his creative endeavors. Buy a copy of that book. Buy two and throw one at a billionaire. Hashtag, just letting y'all know, that is not advice to actually do. That was hyperbole. I claim no responsibility if you do decide to throw it at a billionaire, but I will laugh my ass off. He also has a couple more books in the pipe from Nightmare Press. I think actually Brucado's got some stuff that's either through Nightmare Press already or is going to be soon. Check out Nightmare Press in general. They seem like really cool dudes. Pretty sure I got a link to them in the description as well. If not, I'm going to make sure it's there. But anyway, that is what I have got for this. That's all I got. So I was like hoping like, is there something else here? Nope, that's all I got. So until next time, deuces.